All right. Let's get fired up here.
Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Well, hello and welcome to the Actual Anarchy podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about movies from a Rothbardian and anarcho-capitalist perspective. And tonight, we're going to be singing and dancing and shucking and jiving and chasseing our way through this musical rom-com that celebrates old Hollywood with a hint of jazz. We're going to be talking about La La Land tonight, and this is going to be episode 218 of the show. You can find the show notes more at actualanarchy.com/218. And before we introduce our guest, who's a three-time returning guest, let's say hello to Robert down on the sidelines. We're just talking in the pre-show a little bit about social media and football. And I don't know if we're doing any bets or what, but how are things going your way, sir?
Man, my life's doing great, Daniel. Thanks for asking. It's the middle of a snowpocalypse. We just got dumped on a good 6 to 7 inches. So I had to chain up to get even over here. And we'll see if I can even make it to work tomorrow. But yeah, no, things in my life are going quite well. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Not looking forward to the Super Bowl, but whatever. I don't really care.
Well, you don't want to see Brady become the GOAT and walk off into the sunset down in the Florida sun.
You think he's quitting? You think he's quitting after this year? He goes to a new team, leaves the Patriots, takes them to the Super Bowl. Now he's going to walk away? I just don't see it. I mean, maybe he walks away on top if he wins it. If he loses it, yeah, I think he'll be back. I think he'll be back regardless. That guy, he's in too good a shape. I heard one guy say, I think Pittsburgh dad said that somewhere there's a picture of Tom Brady and it's getting older.
Yeah, well, he did say he wants to play until he's 45, so that gives him, 2 more years, something like that. But I think that he's doing some pretty awesome stuff, but he is the underdog in this one, so we'll see how it goes. Now, I wanted to ask you one other question. This is a weird question, and usually I'd save this for some of the bonus content available for Patreon supporters. Actualanarchy.com/Patreon for that. But Robert, you sent me this weird message yesterday. It was just an address. It said, I am here at this address, and then nothing. And so I was like confused at what that meant. And then I talked to my wife, and she's like, well, that's something that women will do when they're going on, somewhere where they want somebody to know where they are in case something horrific happens. Was that the intention of this? If you were not to be found today to do this recording, would I then start my search at that address?
Correct, sir. That is exactly what happened. Your wife is correct. I am a woman, and that is exactly what I did. I went to a place where I knew one person there and I didn't know anybody else. And it's a little on the sketchy side of things. And I was going to be spending the night there. And, just in case, I don't know what's going to happen. There's some animosity about me. There's some individuals that are not happy about me. And you never know. You just never know. So I just thought I'd play it safe. I'd pull the girl card, whatever. I don't care. I'm not proud. And I thought I'd let somebody know so that at least you had somewhere to direct, some sort of investigations in case I didn't show up.
Okay, so it's not really a safety thing. It's more of a crime historian thing. But
Correct.
Duly noted.
Correct. Somewhere to start looking for my carcass. I just don't want to disappear. I don't want my family to start thinking, hey, where's Robert's body? We never get any kind of closure because you don't know if he's alive or dead. Oh, he's dead. You just can't find the body. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. And I think that's a move that a lot of women will do when they're going out on dates. which is very prescient for this movie tonight because it's like a rom-com where probably many people went on dates to go and see this movie back when going to theaters was a thing, back when we had a functioning civilization and society. So anyway, I'll just tie that into our discussion here. And let's get into the Last Nighters portion of the show and introduce our guests right after these messages. Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Paul Johnson, and we are the Last Nighters. You can find us on lastnighters.com and also on the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel. We also are streaming live on Twitch right now, so buckle up for this one. It's going to be great. The stars are aligning, and we are going to be doing La La Land and chasse our way through this musical rom-com that celebrates old Hollywood with a hint of jazz with our friend Miguel Duque of Amagi Entrepreneurs. This is his third appearance on the show. He was last with us for Napoleon Dynamite, and before that, The Social Network. And oddly enough, he is no longer on several of the main social networks, which we were just discussing in the pre-show bonus content available for our Patreon supporters. Go to lastnighters.com/Patreon for that. You find the show notes and more for this at lastnighters.com/161. But Miguel, welcome back to the show. Why don't you remind everyone your little, elevator pitch and what made you want to do this particular movie, sir?
Hey guys, thanks for having me back. My name's Miguel, and my little spiel for folks who want to know about me is I am a libertarian, voluntarist, liberty activist here in Washington, and I'm also a business and personal growth coach. I'm a certified coach and offer that to entrepreneurs out there or folks who could benefit from one-on-one coaching to achieve their goals. And so you can find me at amagi.life, amagi.life. As you mentioned, one of the previous times I was talking about Amagi Entrepreneurs, which was my Facebook group that I probably ended up shutting down not too long after that because I went ahead and deactivated my Facebook, which has been awesome. It's been freeing. And so now I am in various other corners of the internet doing my thing. I'm on MeWe, I'm on Float, I'm on Minds, I'm on kind of all the good decentralized platforms that are pro-free speech. And what else? I'm involved with I may not have talked about this before. I'm involved with the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, advancing the ideas of Rothbard and Mises and Ron Paul within the Libertarian Party, and pretty much bringing the Ron Paul revolution back. So that's been fun. And also, more recently, I've been doing a lot within the Freedom Cells network. That was something that you and I were messaging about a little bit, Daniel, where, it's this concept where you can form local freedom-loving groups that, a small decentralized local group that can help you achieve more real practical freedom in your life, more sovereignty, more independence, more self-reliance, good stuff like that. And so we've got a pretty good group of freedom lovers here throughout Washington and the Northwest who are involved in the Freedom Cells network, which folks can check out at freedomcells.org. That's CELLS, freedomcells.org. Kind of instead of not a terror cell. Okay. So we've got to really convince people nowadays, I guess, that if you believe in freedom, that you're not a terrorist, but we're not terrorists. We love peace and freedom. And we just want to achieve that and build better alternatives to the whole statist paradigm. So that's been super fun. And I'm really excited about everything we're doing here locally and worldwide for that matter with the Freedom Cells Network. So I wanted to do La La Land because it's just one of my favorite movies. And, like you guys alluded to before we started, this is a great date movie. When I first saw this, my wife and I went out to the movie theater. We probably went to, let me think about this. I think it was 2016, right? So this was back in Houston at the Movie Tavern where both things that are now outlawed in Washington. You can't go to the movies and you can't go get dinner. Well, that's what we did to go see La La Land. We went to the movie tavern, and later also for Valentine's Day one year up here in Seattle, they actually had it at Benaroya Hall, where the Seattle Symphony plays, and they had like the movie being shown. It was a screening of La La Land with the actual live symphony playing all the songs, and that was amazing.
Oh, wow.
That was a really special experience that I'm glad we splurged for, because I just enjoy this movie a lot. It always just gets me way deep in the feels, So, and I felt like it was a good time. Let's talk about this movie. So I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to say about it.
All right. Well, not to be a spoiler alert or anything, but Robert and I have done musicals in the past, and musicals have not received high marks from us in the past, though we'll see. We will see if it's different on this one. We will find out. Now, we usually start this off with the old Google description, so I'm going to start trying to share my screen. I'm going to have some technical difficulties, and I think in the pre-show I made a joke that as forgetful as I am now, I can maybe run for president. So let me see. Is that showing up? Yeah, I think it is. Okay. So yeah, La La Land, here we go. Came out just a few short years ago, 2016, PG-13 musical / romance, 2 hours and 8 minutes with lots of singing and dancing. Got an 8 out of 10 on IMDb, 91% Rotten Tomatoes, 94% Metacritic, 85% of Google users liked it, and it almost won the Best Picture. But psych, bringing the 90s back, it did not. And well, I'm sure we'll discuss that in a moment. But the description is Sebastian, played by Ryan Gosling, and Mia, played by Emma Stone, are drawn together by their common desire to do what they love. But as success mounts, they are faced with decisions that begin to fray the fragile fabric of their love affair, and the dreams they worked so hard to maintain in each other threaten to rip them apart. Came out December 9th of 2016. Director's Damien Chazelle, hope I said that right. Has lots of singing and dancing, as we were saying. And John Legend's in it, among others. J.K. Simmons, who is Jonah Jameson, I think, in the Spider-Man movies, and also in State Farm commercials. He has a bit part in this. The one interesting thing that I can recall from reading about this is that Ryan Gosling learned to play the piano. And so there are no hand models in this one, baby. That's Ryan Gosling playing the piano in this. And, he does a fair job, I think, not too bad, not too shabby. Yeah, I wish I could learn something like that. And I think he spent maybe 2 months trying to learn how to do that. And it worked out just for him. And related to, why you want to do this movie, I had thought that not only is it a movie that you like, but you also, due to your entrepreneurialness, saw some entrepreneurial points to make with these people who were so driven and attracted to each other by their drive to achieve their dreams, and how their romance sort of got in the way of those dreams, and it made them fall. I guess it hurt their relationship when they were no longer pursuing their dreams as ardently as they had before. And so that's kind of the lesson, or one of the lessons that I could draw from this. But anyway, Robert, let's go to you for your opening number. On the freeway overpass, 100 feet in the air with hundreds of cars singing and dancing and twirling about and not falling off.
Yes. So La La Land, I've now seen the movie 3 times. And you're right, Daniel. I generally dislike musicals, especially the worst musical we ever did was Les Miserables with Hugh Jackman, where every single line of dialogue was sung. And it got to be so tedious and annoying that I just couldn't stand it. But in this film, the songs they don't really progress the plot, but, a little bit. They kind of give atmosphere, I don't know. I wasn't annoyed by the songs. I didn't like Gosling singing. I thought he was the weak link on all of that. But I'm a huge Emma Stone fan, and I think that this is her best acting performance. She gets to do all kinds of emotional things with her face and her eyes. She has a very expressive face. and she's so just good in this film that I went back and looked at her other work after I saw this film. It's like, oh, she was also in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll go back and watch those. Those were not great movies, but she's still, I could see why she was cast in them, because she's just good. But she's better in this. I wouldn't recommend necessarily having to go back and watch those Spider-Man movies. But I liked how in your Google description, when you type in La La Land, one of the questions that people ask is why La La Land is so good. As if you're going to ask the internet, and then the internet is going to tell you why a movie is good. It's such a subjective thing. I mean, I could tell you why I liked it, but why should you like it? Why you should think it's good? I think you have to judge for yourself there on that one. This movie it was written and directed by the same guy, a young guy. It's very impressive. It's a romantic comedy that almost pretty much nails the romance, where you have two characters that are endearing to each other, and the audience understands why they are endearing themselves to each other, why they have feelings for each other. It makes sense to the audience because you see them being charming to each other. You see them supporting each other. You see why they care about each other. And so, yeah, I could see why this hits Miguel in the feels. It hit me in the feels very much. You have that very first interaction between them, not the very first one where he pushes past her, but at the 80s party where he comes up and approaches her, and they have this very witty, bantery interaction. Not so insanely wittery, bantery like The Social Network, but more believably wittery, bantery. Like I could imagine myself, like in my wittiest self, hopefully having some kind of fun conversation like that with a woman, and just being like, oh, these two people are matching on a level that you don't normally get with other human beings. You have two people on the same level that you're seeing sparks. You're seeing that chemistry because they are hitting each other at that spot. So
right, and I'll put a pin on Google Maps where that occurs, because I'll have had the address from you sending it to me beforehand.
You son of a bitch. That's what I would do. If I was going to that party, I'd send you the stupid address, because you never know what's going to happen at an 80s party. All right. And then, yeah, the movie, like you said, Daniel, it is two characters following their passions and them supporting each other and them being attracted to each other because they have that passion. Having been in the dating world for some time now, one of the first questions I ask somebody is, what are you passionate about? And like the movie talks about, people they want to know, like Gosling talks about, like they'll like it because you like it, because you're passionate about this story. That's why they're going to fall in love with it too. Then the quality is going to come through and people are going to enjoy that. I think he's totally right. I want to know what people are passionate about. I want to see that they actually have passions. I think if people fail that "what are you passionate about" question, I think that's a big red flag. That's just my own 2 cents, but that's how I feel. I think you got to have an interest in life, things that you actually do care about, because that kind of reveals who you are as a person, what your character is. So this movie, it pretty much fires on all cylinders except for Gosling singing. I'm curious. He did learn how to play the piano. I'm curious how much of the piano he actually played, like how much we actually heard. Like, he could have been just like miming it, and then we actually heard some actual real piano player play. I don't know, but
what I'm told is it was him, literally.
It really was him the whole time.
There was no hand model, no
dubbing,
someone else playing it.
Really? Wow. Okay. Well, impressive, Ryan. I mean, he's a talented guy. I thought his best scenes were where him and Emma were, interacting on a very emotional level. Like he was really pushing her to, like when he shows up at her house in Nevada, that's like a really strong scene for the two of them. And he's like, no, you've got to do this. What are you talking about? Why would you quit? Are you crazy? And he gets insane because this is a betrayal of who she is as a character, how he knows her to be. This movie is it's great. It's worth the rewatch. I think this is the third time I've seen it, and I think it was the best time. Like it just keeps getting better and better. The characters seem to endear themselves to me more and more and more. It's an incredibly mature script from a young, I don't know if it's his first time director or writer or whatever, but he's, obviously not like a super been there, done that kind of a guy, like an experienced guy. So that was really impressive. I don't know. It's a phenomenal rom-com. I really enjoyed it.
Wow. All right. So high marks from you. It sounds like it's going to be. Now, the piano playing, while it was him, it kind of stood out to me in watching it that he's supposed to be this jazz pianist, and yeah, it's okay, but it didn't sound like he was like super jazzy to me, So,
okay. What did you think of the jazz in the movie? Like, I think, in the beginning, she's like, I don't like jazz, and I think that's the feeling that a lot of people have.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, wait a minute, you haven't experienced jazz like I experienced jazz. And I think the movie has a fair point to that.
Yeah, I liked that part where he described the origins of jazz, where it came from, why it has meaning, and he also talks about kind of why it's going away. And this is a question I was going to say for perhaps later, but some prominent reviewers, said that they viewed Gosling's character as a quote-unquote white savior, that he was the guy who was going to come and appropriate culture and save jazz.
White people just can't do anything. Just get out of here, white people. We don't want to see you do anything.
I thought that was a pretty racist take, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, John Legend is in it also, and he's trying to save jazz. I mean, whatever.
In his own way. Yeah, the jazz fusion stuff. But I did like that the Gosling character was passionate about something that is going away, is kind of a dying art. And I think it's sort of echoed with Emma Stone's admiration for old Hollywood. And this whole movie is sort of a callback to Hollywood of the past, Hollywood musical with numbers and big song and dance routines, all shot in one take, big cinema scope, big wide, and all that stuff. And you just don't see that kind of stuff, things like that were done back in the 50s. Those big productions. And this is a bit of a hearkening back to that. And I think that also is maybe why it did get so many award nominations, is because it had that nostalgia pull for people in that industry.
Big time. It's also in the way that it combines old genres and kind of reinvigorates them and mixes it up and kind of makes it new again. It reminds me of Quentin Tarantino in the way that he would take bits and pieces of different genres and mash them up and make a new thing in kind of an homage to different
old
things.
Western stuff.
Yeah. No, it's cool.
Yeah,
does anybody know what this director's done since, or anything else that he's done?
Well, one thing worth mentioning is he's a real young guy. I think when he did La La Land, he was like 32 years old. And the one big movie that he was known for before La La Land was Whiplash, which is another movie with J.K. Simmons, another jazz-related movie about somebody who's obsessed with jazz. And he, actually in that film, it's not really much of a spoiler. Pretty early on in the film, like he breaks up with this girl, almost in like Mark Zuckerberg Social Network style, like at a bar, and he's basically just like, "Hey, look, here's what my life is about. Is I'm going to be one of the greats. I'm going to be one of the great jazz drummers of all time, and ain't nobody got time for you."
You're just dragging me down.
Yeah, exactly. So that was another great movie. That's a really, really good movie. There were, one thing noteworthy on that note about Whiplash and about this director, was he had this vision for La La Land, this movie that he wanted to make, and nobody wanted to fund him or support him in making the movie. 'Cause it's like, wait, so you're telling me you're going to make a movie that's set in LA, set in Hollywood, right? Like, it's a musical. It's a romance. It's something about blah, blah, blah. Okay, all the cliches that you can possibly think of, right? Nobody was interested in this movie until he made Whiplash. And then people are like, oh, okay, this director is onto something. And then he managed to get his shot at making La La Land, which, yeah, if you think about it, it's like all the biggest cliches, but it's done in such a way that's just such a nice homage to film itself. So I think that that's another cool thing about us doing this, that, you know, on your film podcast, that we're doing this movie that's kind of like really a tribute to film in a lot of ways. But yeah, one note about, I think his name's Chazelle, the director.
Right. Yep. You are correct, sir. And did you find the drive to be the best, or to follow their dreams, to be a believable characteristic to you? And does that give you any? Do you find entrepreneurial lessons in this? Not only in the story of the director having this idea and trying to peddle it for a while and nobody wanting it until he had a success, because that's almost a lesson unto itself, right?
That's kind of meta, isn't it? Where, you know, this story probably relates a lot to that. I'm sure that the director himself, more than any of us, relate to this story. And yes, I very much do find truth and believability in the story, and the, you know, pursuing your passions. Like the two characters, what you were saying, Rob, about the way that they sort of click on a weird level, even though they're both putting up a front, and they know that they're both putting up a front, they're both putting on an act. Mia is literally an actress, and Sebastian is like also this sort of like cynical guy who is sort of like fed up with the world because people have zero taste, and they're the type of people, the world is populated, certainly LA is populated by the type of people that go on the Goog and type in why La La Land is good. You know, that's why jazz is dying. So he's kind of a cynic, and Mia is kind of a cynic because, like, you know, there's the feeling of being someone in the crowd and like wanting to be seen for who you are, but you kind of have this pessimism, like, oh, of course nobody's going to see me for who I am because everybody's a freaking idiot zombie NPC, and therefore nobody like values my individuality, you know. So they both have that sort of jadedness, and they both have this big vision, and obviously that's where kind of the struggle comes in, is because they're kind of clashing with the world, and they see each other's passion. Definitely they see each other's individuality, even though they were putting up that front, like kind of they still, their chemistry managed to make it through that. And about the drive and the, you know, following one's dreams. Yeah, I thought it was a very compelling story about basically kind of goes back to just human action itself, right? Or economics or praxeology. It's about human action. Economics and human action are about trade-offs. And so Economics in One Lesson by Harry Hazlitt talks about how economics is about the seen versus the unseen, you know, and about opportunity cost. Well, when you are reaching for the biggest life that you can possibly live in line with your values and in line with your mission and your vision, you have to say no to everything else if you're ever going to really reach that or realize that potential. You've got to say no to 1,000 things so that you can say yes to your one thing. And a lot of those trade-offs are very, very hard to make, because the world is so full, the world is so abundant with everything that you might want to be and to do and to have or to know. And well, there's scarcity. You know, we're living in a world of scarce resources and limited wants, and there's only this little sliver of the pie that you end up getting to have with your time. I mean, you know, you can't be a master of everything. You can't be a master of, you know, you can't be you can't be one of the greatest jazz people of all time and have all the other things that you want in the world. Like, you kind of have to make the trade-offs. And well, it's a very compelling story here where you get to experience how they find this real this real, just authentic love. And that ends up being kind of one of the victims of them each pursuing their dreams,
Right,
but at the same time,
they wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
yeah, totally. So man, it's like gives me the tingles even just talking about it. So I think that there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of truth. And I think that everybody on some level probably relates to a story like this. Cause we all have these dreams and we all probably have a sense of being just that someone in the crowd that people don't really fully see you for who you are. Like only you really, all those intimate things that you dream about, you don't even want to tell people about it. Because like, yeah, I can imagine you, Rob, being on a date, right? And wanting to know like, hey, what are you passionate about? And it's almost like most people are so guarded. Like you might not even feel like that person deserves to know what you're passionate about, right? They've got to earn that right to even know what you're passionate about. Like, we kind of, I don't know, that's oftentimes the world. Maybe I'm sounding too emo for a coach, but honestly, sometimes like the world feels so cold and uncaring about you and your passions, like doesn't give a shit about you. And you've just got to break through that. You've just got to keep pushing no matter like all the people that don't see your value. Like there's not always a market for it. Like when Sebastian, he's got this dream that for a while it seems like he gives up on his dream of starting up this jazz club, and he's probably got a sense that's probably accurate that there's not really a market for this thing. I mean, there probably wasn't really a market for his jazz club until he went and made it big with he compromised on his dreams, compromised on his vision, because initially earlier in the movie he says something to the effect of, he's like, he's showing Mia what jazz is all about. And he's like, look, it's dying because people say, yes, let it die. And I say, no, not on my watch. Right. And she's like, wow, well, what are you going to do? And he's like, I'm going to have my own club someday. And we're going to play what we want, when we want, how we want, just as long as it's pure. And he's like single-handedly in that way, he's going to save jazz with his one little club, and he compromises on that because he goes and joins John Legend guy's band. What's his name? Keith. And and he goes and joins that band, and he's not playing what he wants, when he wants, how he wants, and it's not at all pure. And kind of tying this to like libertarianism. I don't know if you guys follow any of the Libertarian Party politics. If not, I don't blame you. Okay. So
yeah, I try not to.
But there's the purists, if you will. And I don't use that pejoratively like a lot of people do. There's the true believers in liberty, right? There's like the Ron Paul Rothbardians that want real pure liberty. They want the message, out there waking people up. And then there's the pragmatists who are like, man, come on, nobody's listening to that. Okay. Nobody wants to hear that. They don't want to hear about legalizing all drugs or taxation as theft. Okay. They want to hear about, and actually the reality is they don't. People don't want to hear about 2% more freedom. But there's the pragmatists who want to make that argument. And so there's kind of a little callback. I think there's a little bit of how you can relate this story to the liberty movement. But he compromises on his dream in order to, basically for money. Like he kind of sells out, and he knows that he sold out.
Well, also he does it for her, or what he thinks she wants, because of that conversation she had with her mom about whether he's making any progress or any success. And so he hears that and he's like, well, I'll take this job because that's what she wants. She won't tell me directly that's what she wants, but she's told her mom, and thus I now know that's what she wants. So that's why he did that. But
that was brilliant. Really quick. Like that was brilliant how they did that scene, and he's in the room and he's putting on his little tie and she's off in the hallway. And then for like 10 or 15 seconds, they're just showing like the stain on the ceiling, like the water, like the water damage stain on the ceiling. Like that's what's in the shot while she's talking to her mom on the phone. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, it just shows like the disrepair of his current living situation. Like that he hasn't made it, and that the mom would want to be reassured that he's a guy who's going to be able to take care of her daughter and all of that. But taking this to the entrepreneurial level a little bit again, we had the Emma character who she's been going through the motions, for like 5 years. She's been going to these auditions and things and hasn't had a whole lot of success, and she's getting a bit jaded. And we see the example of her doing this emotional scene, and then somebody getting interrupted who's supposed to be watching her, and for whatever lunch they're going to have or whatever. And so it just kind of goes into she's just one of hundreds of people auditioning for these parts, and she's sort of falling into this routine and maybe not doing anything like extraordinary. Whereas the Sebastian character is a little bit different, where he definitely is driven and he has this goal of what he wants to do, but he's like fighting against sort of the limitations of what his opportunities are. So he'll take these jobs to, play at J.K. Simmons' club or his restaurant, but he's supposed to play just Christmas music. But he wants to like throw a couple of flourishes in there and play his own thing and like kind of almost rebel in a little way, but he hasn't like earned that yet, or that's not what he was hired to do. But both of them needed to take a different tack. Like these aren't fresh off the boat coming into LA full of dreams and like they've been there for a while. They've been trying this for a while, and I think that was an interesting kind of way to present them in the story. They're not like Axl Rose getting off the bus in Welcome to the Jungle. These guys have been there for a while, but they both needed to do something different. And Sebastian, I think he did need to get over his animosity with Keith to use not the job as a sellout, but as a means to achieve his goal, to be able to earn money and build up a name and a reputation, perhaps, to then make the club more viable, more successful. Whereas the Emma Stone character, she needed to get out of just this hoping and praying and just signing up for more and more auditions. She needed to break out and do her own thing. And that was where her writing her own play, and with the, push and the drive from Gosling's character to actually do it. And like Robert, you were saying earlier, that's what people, saw and liked her because of it. So she was no longer just one of hundreds of, blonde actress auditioning for part B or whatever, however they, label these things. So they both had to make some changes after being kind of in the trenches of trying to achieve their dreams. But they needed to do something different. And in finding each other, I think they both built on each other and pushed each other to go and achieve those things.
Right. They each offered something up to each other that they weren't getting otherwise beyond just the romance. They were helping each other succeed. And that's why it plays so well for the audience. Or one of the reasons why you can imagine that this romance is true and why the ending is fairly heartbreaking. So even though she goes to the club and reimagines her whole life in this one song, if things had happened just a little bit differently, but in the end she decides to, no, I'm sorry, I needed you for then, and now we clearly don't need each other, and we're moving on with our lives. And it hits you in the feels, and then it hits you in the feels even more when you realize that Gavin Newsom has shut Sebs down and Ryan Gosling is destitute.
Yeah, seriously, that was another element of kind of the emotions that I was feeling this time around watching the movie, because I definitely felt I've it's always kind of tugged at my heartstrings and stuff. This is one of the very few, maybe the only movies that's like really made me cry, and I'm not that type of dude that cries at movies or whatever. But I remember when I first saw it, it was really is the last scene when he sees her in the club and he sits down at the piano and he starts playing. Man, that just I just couldn't hold him back. Couldn't hold the tears back. But this time around, it was like sadness because all that stuff is now non-essential. It's like so many people have had their lives absolutely crushed, all their dreams crushed. People who maybe saw getting to compete at the Olympics this past year as what would have been one of the defining moments, of their lives. They'll never get to, so many terrible things. Yeah. So that was definitely another layer of the emotions.
Right. Yeah.
Around.
And it's almost all for nothing because like many studies have come out recently that said like these lockdowns have virtually no effect and only negative effects. Virtually no positive effects. So it's like, okay, they're doing this for show. And it really does seem like it was just used in a political climate because it was an election year to hurt the incumbent. Now that may be conspiratorial sounding, but it doesn't seem far off because what a difference a day makes. And that day being January 20th of this year, the tune has seemingly changed significantly as far as like the takes on how dire things are. And many governors and mayors who were very strong proponents of locking people down and saying that if you had Thanksgiving and people at your house that they'd arrest you and things like that. Like, I think that's what Mayor Lightfoot of Chicago was saying. And now she's like, hey, restaurants, why don't you go open? And even Cuomo was like, hey, we need to open things up. Otherwise, there won't be anything to open. Like, well, yeah, but you're the guy who shut them down.
So, it's amazing, isn't it? How they get to be the monster who causes all the disaster and then the savior at the end when they reverse their policies. It's amazing how they just walk away scot-free.
I just saw this today that apparently in New York, they were undercounting the deaths in the nursing homes, which I do find actually somewhat surprising because the numbers were quite high due to the policies of the governor there who was putting, because of non-discrimination, putting people who were COVID positive into these nursing homes. So basically putting the illness directly into contact with the most vulnerable. But this is also at a time when it seemed to be that the powers that be were doing whatever they could to increase the numbers. They would count anything as a COVID case and anything as a COVID death, even if it was just COVID related or happened to have or whatever. And so I find it surprising that they would now have been discovered to be having undercounted when at the time it seemed like they were doing whatever they could to overcount. But anyway, I don't mean to tangent totally off of the subject of the movie here, but I just find these things interesting and rather coincidental or not.
They seem to be strangely timed, yes. Like the WHO coming out and saying, oh, we've been having our test be far too sensitive and registering any single particle as being a COVID positive when that's
like
clearly
4 hours after the inauguration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's watching this movie, like, you see Hollywood, you see the arts and culture. It's kind of like a big thing that the movie is about. And so, yeah, just to think that a place like California, where that's so, I would, at least as an outsider, it seems like, the arts and culture is a big thing that makes California what it is. And that was just like thrown out practically like it's totally worthless for all this COVID stuff. And I mean, I guess they've continued to produce movies and stuff, but you got to shut all the theaters down, got to shut all the music and all the restaurants down and stuff like that. So it's pretty sad.
Yeah, especially since due to the arbitrary nature of it, right? Like these certain industries are gonna eat crow and eat shit, and then everybody else. So these other industries over here are gonna be perfectly fine to be open. It's government picking winners and losers in the most extreme sense of the word.
Yeah, and a lot of rules for thee, but not for me, kind of stuff happening as well. And I guess there was a big recall effort for Newsom, and it seems that maybe that also plays a role in the change in tune to bring this back to the movie about singing and whatnot.
What did you guys think of old Goss, the old Goose Man?
I thought I mean, I didn't think his singing was terrible or anything. I think it just added to the charm of the film that our our stars, star protagonists, and everybody were really authentically. This was them at their most authentic selves. It wasn't a stunt double or whatever the proper term is for somebody who subs in, as a singer or a musical performer like they did. Yeah, Gosling did 3 months, 3 hours a day on the piano. They like paid him to do that as like a pre-production preparation process. And same with both of them got vocal coaching and all that stuff, and extensive dance lessons and all that. So they definitely put a lot of work into the film, that even if he's not going to ever be as good a singer as someone who does that for a living, but he was pretty good, and it just made it more believable. That's probably why as a musical it was more tolerable, is because it wasn't so fake. Like, I'm not a musical person either. I wouldn't have chosen probably any other musical to come on and do with you guys unless it was, I don't know, maybe like the South Park movie or something like that. But this one, it wasn't like a lot of those other musicals where it just felt way more authentic. So I thought his singing was great because it served the purpose of,
Because it wasn't great.
exactly.
I guess.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Exactly.
Authenticity. That goes a long way.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Although I loved Emma's singing, I thought it was fine if that was indeed her, and I assume it was.
It is. Yeah, that was their singing.
Daniel.
Which, in terms of authenticity, one thing that I noticed was it's kind of a repeat theme throughout the film, is really authenticity and being yourself, and not like compromising or selling out on what your dreams truly are. But when you were seeing Mia, Emma Stone's character, doing all those auditions and stuff, they do a lot of interesting stuff in this movie with color. And one thing I happened to notice was, say when she goes out with the gals at the party in the beginning, they're all wearing their different colored dresses, and Emma or Mia is the blue dress, and everybody, the other women, are yellow dress, red dress, green dress. This is going to sound real wonky, or maybe, I don't know, very esoteric, but this is something that I noticed. She's doing all these different auditions. There's a bright yellow background. There's a bright green background. There's a bright red background, or she's wearing like a red jacket, right? Or like, she's wearing a yellow dress or what have you. And you can tell, like, she's going into these auditions and she's kind of fake. And that's why she doesn't get the parts, is she comes across as kind of fake. She doesn't really sell it, or it's just not believable when she's, the tough inner city teacher who the students like, why you be tripping? And she's like, no, why you be tripping? And it's just like, yeah, she's super fake. But there's this one audition that she does where she gets rejected, where she had the coffee spill all over her blouse, and she puts this blue jacket over to cover that. But she's giving this extremely authentic performance. She's on the phone, she's crying, it's actually a really great performance. And then the stupid ass page person interrupts to order a sandwich or something like that, to take their lunch order. And she's like crushed because she was giving her everything. She was pouring out her heart and soul into this audition. She was giving her authentic self. She just happened to be wearing a blue coat. I noticed that. But towards the end, she finally does this audition where they see her true talent. And she's just got the most homely, modest little light blue sweater. It's interesting things they do with color in this film. And that was just a theme that I saw, was their inauthenticity throughout a lot of the film. But there's the little moments where they let their true selves shine.
So are you saying that you're noticing there's like almost technicolor colors when it's more fake, and there's more muted tones when they're more being their true selves?
There's a little bit of that. Yeah, there is a little bit of that. Sometimes those most evocative moments, those most intimate moments, like everything goes dark, everything kind of goes dim, And yeah, there's still pops of color, but you have all this exaggerated color, the exaggerated skyline, in the scene that's in your background right there, super exaggerated colors. And that's kind of part of the theme of the film, right? Is Hollywood, and it's all produced, and it's all like a big production. So yeah, that was just a neat thing that things that are going on with the cinematography there.
All right. Well, very good. Well, hey, we're getting close to the end of our show already. Time flies when we're talking about musicals, apparently. So, Robert, I'm sure you were about to make a point, but I'll let you do that. And anything else you've got on your notes or that you want to bring up before we get into final summary and review after that?
I didn't take a single note. I was going to, and I had a few things rattling around in my brain, but it was mostly just about how much this movie nails convincing the audience that this is really taking place. I mean, obviously it's fantastical and set against this Hollywood backdrop where everything is produced, like you guys were saying. But the romance they completely sold it to me. And the movie doesn't work if it doesn't work, right? If you go to the very end of the movie and you never believe that they should have been together in the first place, the ending falls absolutely flat. You're like, yeah, I'm glad you didn't get together. You shouldn't have. That was a nightmare. You shouldn't have gotten together. But people believe it because they meant something to each other. And it also, the real world pressures of providing and following your dreams and sacrificing for that. Like he loves this girl, but yet he feels this pressure from himself and also from her to pursue his dream, and the job with the messengers helps pay for that. Now, we're not exactly expressly told that that's what pays for Seb's, but it's kind of implied, right? And it is implied that the movie is what launches her career, and all of a sudden she goes on to be a big star. But and we kind of, we obviously we run out of time, and I think we're probably skipping a lot of interesting things that could be done with that 5-year time jump. But I mean, for what we're given, this is a fantastic film. It's an amazing effort by a lot of talented people. It's an impressive script from a guy that just did Whiplash. He's clearly a talent to watch. I would watch another one of this guy's films in a heartbeat. I don't know if he's come out with anything recently. I don't know what the story is with him. It's been 4 years, obviously, since he's done something that I've heard of or know about. I don't know why that is. I'm sure there are reasons, good reasons. But I'm sure there are plenty of people that would love to work with him if he's not already doing that. I don't know if he's one of these auteurs that only wants to direct stuff he himself writes and have like total control. Sometimes you get to be a bit of a writer's block and you just don't know what to do. You feel like you're out of stories. I don't know what his situation is. I'm completely speculating, so I could be totally wrong, of course. I probably am because I'm completely ignorant of all of this. But final summary, I've just been raving about this movie the whole time. So I can't give it anything less than I want to say it's either an 8.5 or a 9. I'm really tempted to go 9 just because of the rewatchability, the authenticity, the way they nail the romance. And it even has a lot of good, funny lines. There are some actually full-on funny parts that I wouldn't even call this a rom-com. It's more of a rom-drama. But man, it's just a musical rom-com drama. It's a million different things all wrapped in one, and it just tells a great story. So yeah, this is a 9 for me. Highly recommended if you haven't seen it. Even if you haven't seen it and you just listen to this, I don't think we're probably spoiling things, but it's still, it's not ruining the movie for you. This thing is unspoilable as far as I'm concerned, other than maybe that they don't get together in the end. But even then, it's like, I don't know, maybe you'd still want to watch it to find out why they don't get together or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, highly recommended.
And as you said, rewatchability. So even if you do see it and know the story, it's still worth watching again, at least in your guys' esteemed opinions. Now, I may disagree slightly. When I saw the opening number, it almost lost me there, and my wife as well, because it just seemed so over the top, you know. And I can see the appeal to it after having seen the movie, I guess. But in the watching it, since you're not really sure what you're getting, because you're right, it is kind of this amalgamation of a bunch of different things with a lot of throwback to nostalgia. But then there's like moments that kind of don't seem to fit, and it juxtaposes a little bit. Now, by the end, it all kind of works. And so perhaps upon a second viewing, I would appreciate it more. But going into it, not really knowing what to get or what I'm expecting, it is a little of a jarring watch. So for that, I'm probably going to give it a slightly lower score, though I did enjoy it. And I think it does have rewatchability and is probably perhaps better on a seasoned watch. So, after having seen it, I think it would be better, though I don't know if I will go through the effort of watching it yet again, even though I did purchase this. And funny story, on the way to purchasing this, it was something like $12 to buy it on like Vudu or Fandango or whatever. Or I could buy the DVD or Blu-ray for like $8 on Amazon. So I opted to do that because it had a redemption code. And then a couple hours later, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just spend the extra $4 and buy it so I don't have to have the physical media and deal with that. And then it was too late to cancel it. So then I got the disc, redeemed the code, and got it digitally. And then 2 days later, it goes on sale on all those services for $5. So had I waited 2 more days, I would have saved even more money. And anyway, first world problems. But my score is a 7.5 on this bad boy. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's definitely a chick flick. So watch it with your chicky babies and all that. Miguel, your final summary and review, please.
Oh, well, first of all, I mean, I guess, if you're giving it a 7.5, that goes to show you're one of those people that's Googling why La La Land is good, so, but that's fine.
Do that right now. Why is La La Land
that was him?
Yeah. But you're entitled to your opinion, and that's fine. But you're also the reason that great film is dying. But no, totally just kidding there. So I would confidently give it a 9. 9 plus. I think there's no wonder, why I very much could have believed that this movie would have won Best Picture. I'm not saying it's really like, oh, it's one of the greatest movies of all time. I just, I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy the story, and it was just executed so well. So I definitely would give it a 9. And it's funny, you mentioned like, if you don't know what you're going into watching the movie, you don't know that it's a musical, then it probably is a bit of a surprise. And come to think of it, that was kind of the situation my wife and I were in when we went to see it. I didn't know it was a musical. I just saw, it's Emma Stone and it's Ryan Gosling. It's bound to be good. People are talking about this. So we went to see it, and right off the bat, I was like, oh, we're watching a musical. Okay. And the beginning is so exaggerated, and I think it's meant to be that way. I think it's definitely an on purpose kind of situation where it's like, really, okay, all the LA people are stuck in traffic and they're getting out and they're singing and dancing, and it's like, give me a break. It's like meant to make you roll your eyes, right? By how they're in this environment where everybody's, I don't know, inauthentically cheery or something. Don't know what the real moral to the story about that is, but it's just an interesting way to start the story off, where that was actually their first interaction, was in traffic, where he is honking his horn excessively at her and she flicks him off. And they were just someone in the crowd, NPCs to each other, hated each other. I thought that was just and it kind of makes me think about the environment that those of us who live in cities are living in. where we do kind of just feel like someone in the crowd, like, oh, I'm just surrounded by people who wouldn't really understand me if they tried. So why even bother, you know? But all it takes is that one person out there to really see who you are and to love you for it. You know, that's all it really takes. And I believe that someone is out there for everyone. And it's a risk to let people in to even know who you are, but it's a risk that I think, hopefully pays off. So yeah, I think it's a good movie. I'll give it a, I don't know. I'll give it a 9.3.
9.3. All right.
Using my calculations that are very scientific. So
Follow the science there, buddy.
listen to the science. Yes.
All right. Well, very good. Well, this has been a good discussion. So thank you for that. We do have some post-show content and pre-show content that we've already done, but the post-show content called Kathleen Turned Overdrive, which will be coming up right after this, which is available for our Patreon supporters. So I hope that you can stick around for that, Miguel. And then Robert, next week we got some new stuff coming up. Let me see here. What did I write about this? Oh, we're going to do a movie that just a few short months ago felt a long way off in the United States, though it did feel like it was coming. But all of a sudden it feels all too real as we explore the East German Stasi in the lives of others with our good friend Jon Reed. This is a movie I've been wanting to do for quite some time. It's been on my list. I have hundreds of movies on this list, and I moved it up because of recent events in social media and the shunning of people from good society and all these things for having wrong think, and people turning on each other for not wearing masks and having more than 3 people in their house and things like that. So I feel like talking about East German Stasi, which when this movie was made, I'm sure that the thought was that could never happen here. Well, we're living through it almost right now. So I think it's an appropriate time to do this one. And Robert, any preliminary thoughts? Have you seen this movie, or do you kind of know what I'm talking about?
I have not seen the film. I believe it's a subtitled film shot in original German.
You got to do some reading. So I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I apologize ahead of time.
Singing, and now I have to do reading. I'm back in school. This is a nightmare. All right. No, it should be good. It follows what? It's just a social elite people that find themselves on the wrong end of the Gestapo, basically.
I think it's the neighbors turning on neighbors and the living in fear of being turned in. There's, spying devices and surveillance happening. I haven't watched it myself other than parts of it. I remember seeing it recommended in an article that I saw maybe on LouRockwell.com. And I watched part of it, and then, well, basically we're going to watch it for next week, and it's going to be great. It's a acclaimed movie. It's going to be good.
I'm looking forward to how quaint the spying technology is, because we live in a 2021 where we literally can be easily spied on at any given point at all times.
Right.
So that's fun.
We have voluntarily purchased surveillance devices that we carry with us everywhere
at all times. Yes.
Yes.
So it'll be adorable when they've got like some bug that they have in their telephone or something. So we'll see.
Right.
I'm looking forward.
So anyway, it'll be a lot of fun. So Miguel, any final messages or ways that people can follow what you do? We of course will have your prior appearances on our show notes page. Those being the Social Network and then Napoleon Dynamite with the great Uncle Rico.
Yes, those are a lot of fun. And this was a lot of fun too. Thanks again. Like I mentioned, folks can find me at my personal website, amagi.life, where I haven't been writing like a ton. I've wanted to write more. If anything, I've written more scattered across different little social medias and my Discord groups or my, you can check me out on Minds. I think on minds.com, I'm at Real Miguel Duque, and then on float.app or float.com or whatever, FLOTE, I'm at amagi.life. Actually, it's actually like Amagi DOT life. But if you go to amagi.life, the website, you'll find links to all my profiles and such. And I'm going to be writing more. I'm going to be doing videos and good stuff like that. I feel like rather than documenting everything going on in my life, which I'd like to do, I'd like to share more of my thoughts, kind of just been more busy just living it, and these crazy times. And I do wish that I'd been publishing more writing, just to kind of get stuff off my chest, and people can look back and see what things were really like, during this this new normal, what have you. But definitely check me out at amagi.life. I also mentioned the LP Mises Caucus. Shout out to the LP Mises Caucus. You can go to takehumanaction.com and also check out Freedom Cells. I really encourage everybody to check out Freedom Cells. Me and my Freedom Cells friends have been doing some cool stuff. Like a couple weekends ago, we got together and we butchered 3 pigs. And I've never butchered an animal at all. But one of our Freedom Cells guys from Oregon is a chef. And he basically, his aunt was trying to get rid of some pigs on her property that were ready to butcher. And for free, he just brought them up, showed us how to butcher them. We all went home with a ton of meat. We're learning how to grow food. We're learning how to use encrypted communication and get like more or rather less dependent on the technocracy and the whole corporatist status paradigm. So definitely check out Freedom Cells, CELLS.org. And thanks everybody. I appreciate it.
All right. Very good. And that's a lot of stuff that you've mentioned. So I will re-listen to this and write it down. So it'll go on our show notes page at lastnerds.com/161. We'll be back at you guys next week with the great Jon Reed talking about the lives of others. And with that, we will say good night from last night, everyone. I wish you the very best. And Robert, are there other ways they can support us? I don't want to cut you short there before we move on to the Kathleen Turner Overdrive.
You can support us by resisting tyrants. I have spoken. That's all I want to say today. That's it. That's all I want to say. Resist tyrants. Thank you. Appreciate it. I thank you in advance.
Love it.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out, everyone. All right, and we're going to continue the transmission for just a bit longer on the Actual Anarchy podcast. This is episode 218. Wow, we're getting up there in not only in episode numbers but also in age, as I get very forgetful. In fact, at the end of the last hour's portion of the show, I forgot I was muted. So you may have seen my gums flapping but not hearing anything. It's not because you've been physically abused in the ear. It's because I forgot how to function my mute button. But anyway, I try to save a question for the end here. And this is kind of it. And I'll direct this to Robert because you're young and single and swinging on the scene and all this. I found Gosling's standoffishness, his dickishness, almost, how they say chicks dig assholes? It was almost like that, where he was doing that in such a way. And I don't think he was doing it intentionally to try to attract her, but it's what kind of made her try harder. Like it made him almost unattainable. So it was a bit of a challenge.
It is definitely more challenging. It's not just another guy who is sucking up to you and telling you you're beautiful and all this and that. There have been many women I've spoken to as a single human being, potential dates and whatnot, who get inundated. Absolutely inundated with a tidal wave of messages on these dating apps saying, oh, hey, baby, you're so beautiful, blah, 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 blah. And it's an instant turnoff for every one of them that I've talked to. They're like, this is not what I'm interested in at all. This is just another pickup line type of guy. Doesn't mean it. This is not, I'm looking for something a little more interesting. And when this guy comes up as a real, authentic, challenging person that challenges her, that makes her reassess, her thoughts on life or what she's doing. Like, whoa, you're actually making me rethink my strategy to life. This is very valuable to me. And I could see why, yeah, she was absolutely attracted to him. And it didn't hurt that he also is, Hollywood handsome, whatever. But yeah, I think women are inundated with standard, hey baby, hey beautiful kind of stuff. And they're, somebody who hits them in a different way is going to stand out and going to appeal to them. So that felt very authentic to me.
No, I dig it. And, I've been out of the scene for quite a while, but I remember sort of having both approaches in different cases. And I got to say, the one that was far more successful was the one sort of depicted here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you got to bring something a little bit different. Everybody knows that women generally like to be flattered and thought of as beautiful, but what they don't necessarily realize is that they want to get to know you before they find out you think they're beautiful and that sort of thing.
Right. And you should also kind of have your own thing going on, your own interests and your own passions, like you were talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
Like, otherwise, you're kind of just, a bit of an empty shell NPC type.
Yeah. And who's super interested but that? Women are looking for somebody that not only is going to provide for them, but also they're going to spend the rest of their life with, for the most part. Right? I mean, unless you're just out looking to have a good time, and then in which case you might hook up with them, you might not, whatever. But they're looking to, have someone they're going to be talking to for 40, 50, 60 years. You got to have a little bit of substance there. And somebody that comes along and challenges your preconceived notions, that's at least going to get your foot in the door, bare minimum.
All right. So this is a new segment, this dating advice. Dear Robert, Dear Robbie. We have Robert's rants sometimes. I know we got Dear Robbie.
Dear
Miguel,
Robbie.
Any input on this before we wind down and actually get to the Kathleen Turner Overdrive?
Oh boy. Well, yeah, similarly to you, Daniel, not been in the dating scene for quite a while. I was pretty lucky to find the love of my life, I guess about 12 years ago by now. And actually in the beginning, so we met when I was a senior in high school and she was a junior. I went off to college. We split up real briefly at one point, but then got back together. I think back like, oh yeah, we did challenge each other quite a bit in some things, especially after we split up for a little bit and got back together. That's when I really went down kind of like the Ron Paul rabbit hole and started like my just whole worldview was practically flipped upside down. Even before then, I kind of like I read the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Oh yeah.
And then I started getting into, yeah, it's a good book. I got into Noam Chomsky for a little bit, and that kind of turned me on to this crazy idea of anarchism, a different brand of anarchism. But I was always like an individualist anarchist, I think, especially since kind of discovering Chomsky and stuff. But then, I remember like getting back together with my wife, my girlfriend at the time. It was like we then had very different worldviews, and we were like often, butting heads on things like foreign policy. At one point, she had aspirations to be in foreign policy and stuff like that. But we did challenge each other in a lot of ways, and I think that was really, really beneficial and something that brought us together kind of like even more. I just imagine, being in the dating scene these days, there's probably a lot of people that are wanting to find a romantic partner to fill some gap that they have, rather than as they do have a passion, they do have their passions, they do have their other sort of pursuits in life, and sort of then they can be like a whole person that a relationship then is sort of added onto.
Right.
But
Like the Jordan Peterson, sort yourself out first, and then try to change things in the world. Or
yeah, I mean, I don't. I bet it's never going to be perfect, and I don't think that people should just totally put off romance. If that's something that they want, even if you're still working on yourself, it's like great, yeah, work on yourself, but don't go trying to like fill a void or whatever. Just by feeling like you need to be with someone. I don't know.
Right. Unless your void is for content, then fill it with our show. We've got hundreds of episodes. This is this being the 218th. You can find the show notes more at actuallanarchy.com/218. Nice segue into a plug. Any final comments from you, Miguel, before we get into that Kathleen Turner Overdrive?
That's all I got. Yeah.
And he's spent. Tosses the camera behind. Austin Powers style. Robert, anything from you before we sign off on this one?
Well, just look after each other. Look after each other's mental health. That's something that is important these days. So check in on each other, check in on old friends, relatives, see how they're doing, see if there's anything you can do to help. And just be the best human being you can be. And thanks for listening. And hope you listen to our next episode. It's going to be great.
It's going to be the best, Jerry. The best. All right. Well, Miguel, thanks again for being our guest. We'd love to have you back in the near future. We're booked out through, I think, May at this point, but maybe sometime in the summer we'll do another one. I know we've got a list going of potential movies with you, so we'll hone in on one before too long. But with that, I want to also thank you, audience, for being our audience, and I wish you maximum freedom all around. Peace out, everyone. See you next week.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the Chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 do.